We're waiting for one more school that was not picked up by their bus, so as soon as they get here, we'll begin. So thank you very much for waiting.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today and welcome to our 4th annual El Monte City School District Speech Competition. My name is Virginia Castro. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services for our district, and it is my honor to be here today because we are about to have a fabulous treat with these wonderful speakers. How many of you, is it your first time attending a speech competition? Raise your hand. Okay, so brace yourselves. You are in for a treat. So before we begin, I want to welcome some very important people that made this possible. First off, our superintendent, Dr. Maribel Garcia. And we have our board president in the audience, Mrs. Jennifer Cobian. Thank you for joining us. And then there are some people sitting at the front table that I do not feel sorry for. I mean, I do feel sorry for, but I'm glad I'm not you today because you have a very tough job. And those are our judges. So I'm going to start with Mr. Oscar Marquez, who's our Director of Support Services for our school district. Mr. Pete Galindo, who's one of our teachers on special assignment. Miss Monica Rodriguez Grubbs, who's also a teacher on special assignment. And I want to acknowledge Miss Carrie McMullen, who puts this entire speech competition together. And behind the scenes, we have an amazing TOSA. Her name is Krista Trossel. If you can get up, stand up and wave. And Miss Noemi Garcia. I also want to take a brief moment to acknowledge the teachers in the audience who served as the coaches for these amazing children. So if you could please stand up, we'd like to acknowledge you as well. Okay. It takes a long time to prepare these students, so we want to make sure to acknowledge our amazing coaches in the audience and our school leaders who allow this competition to happen at their sites as well. So if our principals could please stand up, and our assistant principals. And a final round of applause to our parents in the audience because they took some time off to be here with us today. So thank you, parents, for making these fabulous children. So we are going to start with our 6th grade competition. 6th graders will present an expository speech. So the main purpose of this format is to inform the audience about a topic. How can conflict lead to a positive? The speaker's goal is to present a new and unique perspective on a topic. He or she may use personal experience and/or information discovered in research in their presentation. This is not a persuasive speech. Each speaker will have 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
When people talk about conflict, they usually associate it with negative situations, such as death, car crashes, or natural disasters. What may not initially come in mind is the word divorce. This is a conflict of the heart, mind, and spirit. Divorce may not be I want to move to USA with them. This was a major conflict for me because if I decided to leave my dad, I would be leaving my mom. Dad, show my game mom. In the first chapter, I've learned English, I made friends, and guess what? My behavior is on the up. Through all this, I realized I can accomplish anything the levels ahead
We'll use this time to remind the students that if you hear the school bell, you can pause and it won't be counted against your time. Okay, just go ahead and start.
Oh, okay. I need a box.
A box.
I'll make sure we see your
Yeah. Yeah. Conflict. You may think of conflict as a national disaster or war. Well, this conflict is the same, but not quite as terrible. This conflict takes place on YouTube. PewDiePie versus T-Series. PewDiePie versus T-Series is not a problem, but it also helps people with different nationalities or ethnicities together. This battle between PewDiePie and T-Series is for YouTube supremacy. And what this means is that both channels are fighting for most subscribed channel on YouTube. Right now, PewDiePie has over 90 million subscribers and is maintaining to keep a 250K or more sub gap between them. Many subscribers and YouTubers think it's reasonable for PewDiePie to keep a 250K or more sub gap between them. One might ask, who is PewDiePie and who is T-Series? And what positive outcomes may come out of this. PewDiePie is a famous Swedish YouTuber that has been king of YouTube for a very long time. And thousands of viewers support him because as a little channel, he has worked his way up for #1 spot of YouTube by uploading gaming videos and other enjoyable content. He is also an independent YouTuber because he doesn't have a big company backing up his videos like T-Series does. He now makes enjoyable content such as Pew News, meme reviews, and reaction videos. T-Series is essentially the bad guys in this war. This company is based in India and was started in the 1980s by a guy named Gulshan Kumar. T-Series is basically a corporation that makes most of the music and movies of India. The reason they just popped out of nowhere and they became so relevant is because they post almost 20 videos a day. And since they are a company, they can monetize their videos, which means they make money from their videos to make other videos. Also, since they're a company, YouTube doesn't think their content is too inappropriate to post. T-Series has also been accused of subbot. Subbot is online bots that are created by T-Series to subscribe to them. They have also been accused of having every YouTube channel created in India automatically be subscribed to them. This battle for YouTube supremacy actually brought people together. One important fact is that a lot of Indian people actually like PewDiePie more than they like T-Series. A channel on YouTube called Asian Boss went to the streets of India and asked native Indian people about PewDiePie versus T-Series. Some said they liked PewDiePie more than T-Series. Others said that they actually found T-Series through PewDiePie. And as PewDiePie says, T-Series should be thanking me. This shows that no matter where you're from, you can have the same opinion and preferences as people around the world. Conflict can come in all shapes and sizes, but this one has kids more concerned about it because they're typically attracted to this type of entertainment. The world has so many problems these days, and this should appeal to them to relieve the stress and to have some fun. It also helps world peace with people having one opinion on whether they like or hate PewDiePie or T-Series. It also helps people, no matter their race or culture or where they're from, come together. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. Our next speaker is Aaron Ramirez from Wilkerson School.
Hello, my name is Aaron. Hello, my name is Aaron Ramirez, and I will be representing Wilkerson School in this year's speech contest. In my opinion, a problem or conflict can lead to new insights and coming out of a problem in an original way. In a conflict, things can be fixed and everything can go back to normal instead of arguing with your partner. You can develop a stronger relationship and work together in a positive way. Working through a conflict unites you with others. It's like an us versus me, which means that it's better to work as two instead of working as one. When you decide to not solve a conflict, the situation can get worse, and things between you and your partner can get worse. When you decide to solve a conflict, it's the other way around, because you're working as a team instead of working as one, and you're gaining more ideas. For example, when you and your team are having a positive conflict, it can be a good thing because it's encouraging people to be open-minded and to share what they think and believe is important. Right now, in the real world, there are many conflicts. Among them, one is about women's rights. They believe that they are targeted in an unfair way, and they want that to stop, and they want their rights recognized. This is a good example of a positive conflict because the women are sharing what they think and believe is important, and we need to acknowledge that and support them in their struggle. Another good example is Martin Luther King Jr. All his life, he struggled for African American rights. All of his effort was not in vain, because the outcome for this conflict is that now all African Americans have their fair rights. Recently, there was a 7-day teacher strike in LAUSD. The conflict started because the teachers said they were getting inadequate pay and the classroom resources were limited. Also, special needs students were not getting enough help. The outcome for this conflict is that the students and teachers got what they wanted, and as a result, the education for the students will be improved. Rosa Parks also stood up for African American rights when she decided to not give up her seat to a white passenger when the white section was filled. The outcome for this conflict is that you can now sit anywhere you want in the bus, regardless of your skin color. I believe that the best way to deal with a conflict is to carefully analyze the situation, talk to the person you are disagreeing with in a diplomatic way, try to find common ground in which the both of you will be happy about the outcome. Thank you for your time, and that was my perspective on conflict.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next speaker, please welcome to the podium Miss Destiny Nora from Columbia School.
Conflict. At most times, conflict has a negative connotation, since it is often referring to a serious disagreement. However, many positive results have originated from conflict. Conflict can create a platform for people to express their feelings, shed light on a subject, and change things for the better. Conflict helps people express their feelings. This is very important because it's unhealthy to bottle up all of your feelings. When we face our problems, everyone gets to share how they feel about them. Once we express our feelings, we can solve the problem so that everyone wins. For example, during the time of slavery in our country, some people were in favor of the practice and some weren't. For a while, the way they solved that conflict was to allow slavery in the southern colonies and to abolish it in the north. In time, voices of many colors stepped forward to share their opinions that this practice was wrong for our entire nation. Another more personal example involves a time my friends and I were working on a project in class. We drew different kinds of stands that each raised money. Each stand had one of us in it. When we were adding the finishing touches, we had to decide what colors to use. All of us disagreed with each other's opinions. We were at a standstill. Soon enough, though, we realized that each of us could color our stand according to our own preferences, instead of limiting ourselves to one color. We discussed our opinions, collaborated, and solved our conflict in a way that led to everyone's happiness. Conflict also helps to bring light to a subject. The first step toward positive change is to call attention to a problem that people may not be aware of. This shakes things up. After the dust settles, people can share their thoughts on the subject and decide how they plan to solve it. For example, during the Revolutionary War, the Patriots performed many rebellious acts, including the infamous Boston Tea Party, to show that they did not like the way Britain was treating them. If colonists had turned a blind eye, these acts would bring the situation to their attention. Once they were aware, they were eventually forced to join a side as the conflict rose, creating a new nation and demonstrating that conflict can even lead to peace. One last reason why conflict is a necessary ingredient in problem solving is because at times it is the only road to take to change things for the better. Now you may be thinking, how can this be? Isn't conflict a negative thing in itself? How can it solve another negative action? However, disagreements can lead to a positive change. For example, in World War II, the Nazis imprisoned Jews in concentration camps and many were killed there. Many people did not believe it was right to do so. Eventually, this brought the whole world to a disagreement. The Jews needed someone to fight for them, and the Allied forces joined the war to help. In the end, the Jews were freed and the Nazis paid for their actions, proclaiming a message loud and clear. It was wrong to use power in this way, and the world would not allow it. From this lesson, we can still learn facing a conflict helps negative situations get better. To sum it all up, we need conflict. There's no shortage of proof to teach us this. Even though we may fear conflict, we must remember that sometimes it is the most constructive tool to help us achieve the results we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Destiny. Please welcome Estrella Quijada from Cherry Lee School.
The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Thomas Paine. Key word, conflict. The word conflict can mean more than just arguments or disagreements. It can mean learn, inspire, or even dedication. These meanings of the word conflict are hidden where most people can't see them. But thankfully, this district provides an essential education by teaching us this kind of information. When people think of conflict, they think of sickening, disappointment, and incorrect. But is that really what conflict means? As human beings, we are born to come into conflicts and disagreements. If not, there would be no sense of human progression. Take Thomas Edison, for example. He believed in an idea that everyone thought was impossible.
But with his sense of confidence and not being afraid of conflicts or disagreements led him to the most revolutionary invention, the light bulb. As we can see in this example, conflict led to a positive outcome. On an everyday basis, we face conflict and have a choice on how to handle it. 2 inspirational habits from the 7 habits are seek first to understand, then to be understood, and think win-win. These 2 habits are involved by first seeking to understand and hear everyone else's opinion, then think of a win-win solution to fairly even each other's thoughts. Ronald Reagan said it well, peace is not an absence of conflict, it is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. And I, a 12-year-old, a 6th grader, Estrella Quijada, just shared how conflict could lead to a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Estrella. Join me in welcoming Tung Bui from Potrero School to the podium.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Tuan Bui, and I'd like to share with you my thoughts on conflicts, which can result in positive outcomes. Everybody will experience conflict in their lives. Everyone. Me, you, it's inevitable. These conflicts can lead to negative effects like stress, depression, and anxiety. But it doesn't always have to be that way. If you learn to take control of your conflicts, it can lead to positive results, such as new opportunities, a complete transformation of your life, and growth as a person. Conflicts can lead to new opportunities in your life. In the Scholastic News article, My Ranger's Journey, readers learn about Sally Home and Yafet. Sally Home and her brother, Yafet, lived in a poor African country called Eritrea, where the government came after them, seeking punishment for their mother's action of leaving the country. They too were forced to leave and made their way to America by relying on their instincts, themselves, and entrusting the help of strangers. After years of traveling, they finally reached America and reunited with their mother. Sally Holmes said, "These obstacles that my family had to overcome made me who I am." Sally Holmes displays habit number 1, be proactive by facing our conflicts. She is currently a 6th grader living with her mother, while Yafet is living in North Carolina as a college student. Conflicts can also lead to complete life transformations. As a kid, actor Danny Trejo was a drug addict and a thug, landing in and out of jail. Fearing that he was going to be executed, Trejo recalls himself asking for a second chance, saying to God, "I will say your name every day, and I will do whatever I can for my fellow man." When he was released, he kept his promise and turned his life around. When he is now proactive and finds rewarding helping others, and is also enjoying life as an actor. Finally, conflicts can also lead to personal growth. I want to tell you about someone who is very intelligent and charismatic. That's right, it's me. 6 years ago, I lived happily in Missouri with my family. But then one day, my family told me that we were moving to California. I was devastated. I thought that I was gonna fit in and make friends because I didn't speak much English back then. I was also in denial, thinking it wasn't gonna happen. But it did happen, and we moved to California. Everything was different from what I expected. I made many new friends and was also introduced to many things that pushed me out of my comfort zone. Today, I'm no longer shy, I have confidence in myself, and I'm definitely much more outgoing. As you can see, dealing with conflict in life can result in positive outcomes like new opportunities, change, and could lead to development as a person. And while, yes, many times, conflicts can lead to something unfavorable. But if you manage to learn from it, the results might surprise you. No one's perfect, and nobody's gonna live a perfect life. There are going to be difficulties, but if you manage to overcome them, the outcomes could be just amazing. Thank you.
So what do you guys think so far? Thank you, Tung. Our next speaker is Chloe Apodaca from Durfee School.
Conflict is an obstacle which must seem hard to overcome. There are many challenges in life. Conflict can even be a life-threatening ordeal to people who have been bullied. Conflict is not about how you struggle about it, but how you overcome it and become stronger. Even famous people have faced conflict as well. Conflict can even sometimes have a positive outcome. Tom Cruise is an American actor and producer, and he is considered one of the biggest stars in the United States. But was he always? Tom Cruise was born in New York on July 3, 1962. He was brought up in a near poverty and abusive home. Thomas Mapother III, Tom's dad, was abusive to Tom. Tom called his dad a bully and a coward. But despite all of the hard times, Tom overcame this particular piece of conflict, and look where he is now. So go ahead, fall down. The world looks different from the ground. This is a famous quote by Oprah Winfrey. I believe this quote is saying that even though you have probably been knocked down a couple of times, get up and try again. You can fail at what you don't want to do, so might as well take a chance on doing what you love. This is a quote by Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is a Canadian-American actor, comedian, etc. Jim Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in Canada. At the age of 15, Jim had to drop out of school to support his family. His family then went from poor to really poor. They eventually had to start living in a van. Despite being homeless, this did not stop Jim from wanting to achieve his dreams. His dad drove him from a number of different comedy clubs, and this was the beginning of his career. Just be comfortable with who you are. This is a quote by Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt is an American actor who has been seen in many different movies. Chris Pratt was born on June 21, 1979 in Virginia. Chris Pratt was not always famous though. Chris once lived outside of his van in Maui, Hawaii. While working at Bubba Gump Shrimp Company restaurant, he got noticed by actress and director Ray John Chong. Impressed by his looks and his energy, she offered him a role in a short horror film. This is where his career began. Chris then took his life into his own hands, and look how it turned out. Amazing, right? But there are still many, and I'm talking thousands of actors, directors, singers, athletes, and even regular day people going about their days who I have not mentioned, who have faced conflict but overcame it. Conflict is hard, and I get it, but what really matters is how you overcome it. You can control conflict by the way you handle dealing with it. This is a famous quote by Ronald Reagan. Peace is not absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Our next speaker is from Sherpser School. Please welcome Karina Lee.
Conflict. When conflict arrives, you can't just throw it away. Many of the conflicts and sacrifices people in history have made affected our modern time. Rosa Parks, Jackie Robinson, and myself have all faced conflict, but because we were determined, we had a positive outcome. I truly believe that many positive outcomes comes from conflict because we can learn from our mistakes. Rosa Parks was an African American who dealt with problems, but in the end, she had a positive outcome. Rosa Parks was taking a bus home. She says that the next stop was the Empire Theater, and some whites got on. They filled up the white seats, and one man was standing. Rosa claims that the bus driver who kicked her off the bus in the past told her and 3 African Americans in the front row to move so the white man could settle. They didn't move. Then the bus driver said, "Y'all better get up and make it light on yourselves and give me those seats." The 3 African Americans moved. Park claims that the driver saw her sitting there and asked if she was going to stand up. She said, "No." Then he said, "Well, I'm going to have you arrested." She replied with, "You may do that." She came out 4 days later and held Martin Luther King with the Montgomery bus boycott. The boycott lasted for 381 days, and finally the segregation ended, and Rosa Parks helped turn the conflict into something positive. Jackie Robinson. Like Rosa Parks, he was an African American who dealt with problems, but in the end, he had a positive outcome. Around 1947, blacks were not allowed to play sports with whites. Robinson faced lots of racism because he was a black baseball player. He claims that some of my own teammates refused to accept me because I was black. The hate mail piled up, their threats against me and my family. But when his teammates saw how talented he was, they kept him and gave him tips to improve his craft so they could earn more money. And due to Jackie Robinson not giving up his dream of playing baseball, he was the first colored player in the major leagues. Jackie Robinson shows that conflicts can lead to positive outcomes. When you lose someone, it can be a challenge, but after facing this challenge, you won't feel as horrible as you did in the beginning. Most people lost at least one person in their life. Think about the surrounding people. Do you think they lost someone? Probably yes. You probably assume they haven't lost anyone. Maybe that's because they never opened up about it. If you never lost someone important to you, think about this. That person can't respond to your questions or problems, and you can't do anything about it. They're gone, right? No, because if you do care about them, you would be able to remember them. When I lost my closest cousin to cancer, I was so upset because she was my best friend. But after letting her go, I became more independent. This personal experience shows that no matter what conflict or challenge you have to confront, something positive can come out of it. I truly believe that many positive outcomes comes from conflict. Rosa Parks, Jackie Robinson, and myself have all faced a problem, but something positive came out of it. Everyone has a conflict they have to face. Think about yourself. What conflict do you have to face?
Thank you, Karina. Next, we have Valerie Ramirez from Rio Hondo School.
How conflict can lead to success. Many kids and adults tend to give up on certain goals because they fear that they would fail. They doubt their dreams and desires would ever come true. What people don't seem to realize is that some actors on their favorite TV shows or movies probably have been through way more than you think. These influencers worked hard to get where they are today, and believe it or not, they overcame conflict. For example, Michael Oher. You might know him as a famous football player. He had to overcome great obstacles in his life. What you probably didn't know was that he was homeless and his mother was a drug addict. He struggled until a very nice couple took him in. He then started to get tutoring and eventually got scholarships for football, where he later started to play for the professional football team, the Baltimore Ravens. Cardi B didn't grow up rich either. She grew up in the Bronx, New York. Like many Latinas living there, she was raised in poverty, attended a racially isolated and economically disadvantaged New York public high school, and has been a victim of domestic violence. She obviously worked so hard to get where she is today, and believe it or not, she overcame conflict. She pushed through an abusive relationship, found a job, and despite her circumstances, she became one of Los Angeles' top female rappers and won a Grammy Award in 2019. All things considered, you're gonna go through some encounters in the future, but don't think it is a bad thing. Being perfect will just lead you to stress and unhappiness. Think about it. What if you never failed at anything in life? You wouldn't learn from your mistakes or how to exceed at your goals in life. Don't doubt yourself because you were raised a certain way or grew up in a certain city. With hard work, you can accomplish everything that life throws at you. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Next, from New Lexington School, please welcome Jasper Lee.
Thank you.
How can conflict lead to a positive outcome? When you hear the word conflict, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Hatred, rivalry, war. These words all have one thing in common: negativity. However, from conflict, we can experience growth. Conflicts such as the Civil War or the Cold War forced people to band together, making people to trust more and to toughen up. My eyes suggest conflict is necessary. Now, I would like to share a story called The Great Mango Conflict of 2013. Our mango tree produces the sweetest and juiciest fruit. We work and wait all year to enjoy this delicious fruit. Well, the mango tree partially hangs over to the neighbor's yard, where they happily pick the overhanging mangoes. We were fine with them doing this as the mangoes were clearly on their side. But our neighbors soon became bold and started coming into our yard to pick mangoes off of our tree. Our neighbors have become criminals, stealing the rewards of our year-long work. This is not an isolated incident. This act of neighbor-on-neighbor crime is happening all around our neighborhood, and probably yours too. I've seen people take soccer balls, bikes, and even clothing hanging outside. In regards to difficult neighbors, study shows that they can cause stress, tension, anger, and anxiety. Clinical psychologist Angela Clark states, "You're faced with the problem of living right next door to someone who is a source of tension, and that can be really challenging." What could we do with our neighbors who are causing such tension? My family and I walked over to a face-to-face conversation to confront them and the problem. They apologized, but what happened next shocked my whole family. They explained that they were struggling financially and were using the mangoes to feed their children. After some reflection, I was able to identify the positives that came from this great conflict. I am more understanding of those in need. Those neighbors who were once a source of tension became our friends. So again, I suggest perhaps conflict is necessary for growth, learning, and banding together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper. Next, we have from Cortada School, Miss Valerie Becerra.
Good morning. My name is Valeria Becerra, and I am representing Cortada Elementary. What does conflict mean? Conflict is a serious disagreement or argument. Conflict is part of life. However, conflict raises awareness of what is important to people. Managing conflict can help build self-esteem. People manage their conflicts differently than others. Here are 2 examples of positive outcomes from conflict. The first example is the Momo Challenge. First of all, The Momo Challenge dared kids to hurt themselves or even kill themselves. Whoever started this challenge didn't think about what was going to happen to all the kids and teenagers he or she affected. However, as disturbing as the situation is, a positive outcome is that parents are now aware of what their children are doing on the internet. As well, the artist himself, Kazuki Iso, was able to help calm the fears of so many children by making an announcement to the world that he has destroyed the statue and Momo is no longer an existence anybody. The next example is about a person named Ayana Najuma. In the state of Oklahoma, Ayana Najuma fought against segregation. Starting at a very young age at 7, she participated in sit-ins at diners. She and her friends did this because they believed in equality for all people. African Americans weren't allowed to go or eat at the same places as white people. They knew this wasn't right, so they fought for their rights. When they arrived at her first restaurant, they asked the waitress for a drink. If the waitress refused to serve Ayana and her friends, they sat politely and waited until they were served. Sometimes that would take more than 3 days. Once the waitress finally decided to serve them, they left the restaurant and moved on to the next restaurant. A positive outcome is that once they served Ayana and her friends, that restaurant was no longer segregated. The other positive outcome is that Ayana and her friends fought hard to stop segregation, and they won this restaurant one at a time. So the question is, how can conflict lead to a positive outcome? Well, conflict can't always end positively, but when it does, it's great. When you encounter a conflict, think about how you can change it around and make it positive. After all, conflict is part of life and we learn from our mistakes. So try to stay positive when you encounter a conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Our next speaker is from Lagore School. Please welcome Mr. Justin Vargas.
Hi. Hi, I'm Justin Vargas, and my speech is titled ADHD, My Gift. I've always felt like a normal kid, but everyone's special because we all have different gifts or talents. What's special about me? I have ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder has always been a problem for me. I was diagnosed with it at about 3 to 4 years old. Having ADHD has absolutely led to conflicts in my life, but it has also taught me that conflicts can lead to positive outcomes. I used to think ADHD was interfering with my life. I would get impulsive, hyper, very talkative, and I'd act crazy. It caused me to lose my temper easily, misbehave, and sometimes it caused me to lose friends or get in trouble. ADHD did many things to embarrass me in front of friends and family. I used to be ashamed of it. To this day, I'm 12 and my problems with ADHD remain, but ADHD has also helped me to grow. What I've learned is that ADHD is a gift. It helps me as much as it troubles me. There are many solutions for ADHD, like therapy, medications, and more. I've learned that most people with ADHD are very smart, gifted, and creative. Leonardo da Vinci, Michael Phelps, and Michael Jordan have ADHD, and look at what they achieved. I've gained a lot from my many experiences with ADHD, and with it, I'm pursuing great success. ADHD has helped me achieve many great things, from getting into gifted and talented education, gifting me with different perks, like a kind, lovable, and funny personality. Sometimes. ADHD has even made me very intelligent for my age. All my traits make me, in my own way, unique. I finally recognize all my gifts, and I now understand that everyone has a gift that makes them unique. I now know from personal experiences that I'm gifted. I may be different, but I don't need to be the same as others. I can also view ADHD with a positive perspective. I also proved to myself that while ADHD has caused me conflicts, it's also led to positive outcomes. Take it from me, I once saw ADHD only as a conflict, but now I'm looking at it as a gift. I'd like to leave you with some advice. Don't look at conflicts as burdens. Instead, look at them for what they truly are, opportunities. I once couldn't see my gifts and talents because I could only see the conflicts in my life. Now, I think of my conflicts as blessings. Conflicts can lead to change and positive outcomes that can help you achieve success. I still have conflicts, but with them, I'm rising to great success. Please remember to be inspired by our conflicts because they can yield great rewards. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next, from Rio Vista School, please welcome Ira Maddock.
When I drive around with my family, I often see some people laying on the ground, asking for money, or trying to entertain people passing by. All around the world, homelessness has become a worldwide conflict. I wonder if they had an internal conflict growing up, like a divorce, or if they just ended up on the sidewalk due to an external conflict, like a financial struggle. There are some people in the world trying to help those in need. Homelessness is a worldwide conflict, but it has brought people together to help. Homelessness has become a conflict for those who have lost their jobs, addicts, and those with disabilities. Homelessness isn't just an external conflict. It can lead to internal conflicts, such as depression, for those who are homeless. There are at least 150 million people living on the sidewalks and in poverty. About 1.6 billion people are living in inadequate shelter, according to key housing statistics. People who are homeless are being affected in more ways than one. Not just the fact that money is the problem, their health is another. Homeless people will have poor health due to lack of nutrition, disease, and trauma. People are unable to financially support themselves. Additionally, living on the streets is dangerous, and these people are putting their lives at risk. More than 500,000 people right here in the United States are homeless on a given night. According to a report from the Department of Housing, 1 out of 50 children, or 1.5 million children in the United States, will be homeless each year. In 2013, that number jumped to 1 out of 30, or 2.5 million per year. That number still applies to us now. According to NBC News, there are 31,516 people who are homeless in LA 2018. And El Monte, according to World Population Review, nearly 23% of the city's population lives below the poverty level, putting many families in jeopardy. There are many people and organizations creating positive outcomes for the homeless. One is Feeding America. For the past 40 years, Feeding America has helped 46.5 million people. This organization's mission is to feed America's homeless population by providing meals. Feeding America works as a nationwide network of food banks in the fight to end hunger. Right now, Feeding America is the nation's largest domestic hunger relief organization. Another example is Luke Mickelson, from CNN Heroes to 2018. Luke Mickelson helps people in Twin Falls, Idaho. Luke was inspired to help those in need when he saw children sleeping on the floors and in nests of clothes. He founded the organization Sleep in Heavenly Peace. His organization builds beds for people who do not have a bed to sleep on. He builds beds for those who need certain things. One bed at a time, he is helping kids and their families sleep more comfortably by providing them a bed. In conclusion, homelessness is a worldwide conflict. However, many people are positively affecting the lives of those in need. Hundreds of people volunteer, make meals, and provide a comfortable place to sleep or call home. Fortunately, many homeless are getting the help they need.
Thank you, Ira. And last but not least, from Clemenson School, please welcome Kelia Naranjo.
Thank you. Conflict. When this word comes to mind, most think of fighting, war, disagreement, and politics. In short, the word conflict typically invokes a negative reaction. In a world where we face conflict every day, we must ask ourselves, how can we overcome these obstacles, and more importantly, what can we gain from them? Conflict appears in many shapes and forms. Today, I would like you to focus on internal conflict and how we could take something positive out of it. Internal conflict can lead us down a path of self-doubt, but if we learn to overcome our insecurities, we can achieve great things. Since the age of 6, I've been practicing the martial art of Taekwondo. Even though you would think with 5 years of practice I'd be experienced at the sport, I still struggle with a lack of self-confidence every now and then. Last year, this lack of self-confidence snuck up on me while I was at a tournament. Standing at 5 feet and 6 inches tall, eyes bulging, fists clenched, my opponent had mentally beat me before the fight had actually started. My fears worsened when I overheard her coach say, "I don't want to see any blood, okay?" I felt my heart racing and I couldn't control my breathing. How on earth was I supposed to be, let alone fight someone who was at least 2 heads taller than me? So understandably, as I bowed to my opponent, which I had secretly named Godzilla in my head, I was a nervous wreck. I could feel sweat rolling down my neck while thoughts like, I wonder if I look like an ant to her, easy to squash, and there's no way this is going to end well. The anticipation was getting too much to bear. The referee signaled us to start the fight. I unleashed my war cry as adrenaline rushed through me. Hi! I kicked and punched, every move reminding me of the hard work that I put into my practices. My fears disappeared and anger took control. I had deserved to win this fight. By the end of the second round, I had won 27-2. How did I win, you may ask? How had I beat such a huge opponent? Although one may say I struggled with an external conflict because of the physical strength I had to conjure or use, what I had really fallen subject to were my own insecurities. The fight, it seemed, had been lost the moment I let negative thoughts enter my mind. I had drowned in my own insecurity. I had let fear decide for me. But when the fight started, something in my mind had clicked. I had discovered the secret weapon that could triumph over conflict: self-confidence. No matter how deep we are buried in our insecurities, by truly knowing your self-worth and believing you can do anything, you can overcome these conflicts. Although they can force us down a dark road where we may find ourselves struggling to believe we can do anything, if we learn to love and trust our abilities, we can emerge with a sense of happiness and fulfillment. Since the day of that fight, I have learned to maintain self-confidence and use it to defeat internal conflict. Yes, I know most of you don't do Taekwondo, but I will guarantee you that you've come across similar conflicts. You may have struggled with things such as self-image, bullying, or even fights with your siblings or parents. By internalizing your conflict, you can find ways to come out stronger, to learn from it, and to even become a better person. And that's how you can make a positive outcome out of almost any conflict. So remember, you can defeat conflict with self-confidence. Hey!
Thank you, Kelia. We are going to take a 5-minute intermission so that we can acknowledge our 6th graders first and then welcome them off the stage. And we're going to move in our 7th and 8th grade team. So let's give our 6th graders a big round of applause. We will return in 5 minutes. Team competition. It's okay to clap. So our 7th and 8th graders will present an original oratory. The main purpose of this format is to convince the audience of the speaker's position by using evidence, logic, and emotional appeals. Speakers have chosen to present on one of two topics. The first one is, without conflict, there can be no progress, or conflict is necessary for a healthy democracy. Each speaker may choose to present his or her argument in a logical and supported informational piece, or as a persuasive speech that would include a call to action. Each speaker will have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to complete their presentation. At 4 minutes, a bell will sound, letting the speaker know he or she has 30 seconds to wrap up. Are we ready? Our first team is from Rio Hondo School. Let's welcome Jasmine Monreal to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jasmine Monreal, and I will be speaking on my argumentative essay called Progress Includes Conflict. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Thomas Paine. According to Google, a conflict is defined as a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. Our country's government experiences a lot of conflict, and this allows for people to rethink and fix laws to change with the times. Seeing as conflict is part of daily life, it is easy to see why it is so necessary. It is simple to see a lot of the world's industrial breakthroughs come during times of war. Conflict allows for buildups in every possible type of relationship, even in a relationship with yourself. Although people may believe that conflict is unnecessary for progress in many circumstances, like those of war and government, it has proven irrefutable. Conflict is a very useful tool, especially when it comes to reforming the laws of our country. The people of this country create conflict, and this allows for legislation to go in and tweak laws that don't allow for equality or justice. The civil rights movement can be used as a prime example for why this works. During the 1950s through 1960s, there was a lot of conflict between the blacks and whites. African Americans would be discriminated and would be tired of being against. So they started the nonviolent civil rights movement. But let me just say, it was not always nonviolent. There were some times where African American people would try to stand up for themselves, and you would not want to know what the white people would do. However, Martin Luther King Jr. created nonviolent conflict resolution, and that eventually led to progress. Martin Luther King is considered to be one of the greatest leaders in history. Although people may think that disagreements are not the solution for arguments, they can help others understand different viewpoints. People have different opinions, and that is what makes us all different. In an article by the Washington Post, Ian Morris writes something about when looking upon the long run of history, it becomes clear that with 10,000 years of conflict, humanity has been creating larger and more organized societies, which have greatly reduced minimized the risk that members will die violently. This statement that Morris revealed demonstrates how war can help bring progress to a country. In a way, it is like a forest fire. It kills old plants and allows for the rebirth of new ones. This puts the past 100 years in perspective. Since 1914, we have endured worlds, genocides, and government-sponsored famines, not to mention civil strife, riots, and murders. And since 2000, the United Nations tells us that the risk of violent death has fallen even further to 0.7%. In this quote, Morris allows for us to understand that through war we have eliminated ways of violence, and this allows for the lack of violent environments. War. A prime example of the most violent type of conflict has led us to a less violent society. Sometimes conflict with yourself allows for personal growth. In this essay, I had a lot of trouble with my grammar and the format of it, to the point where I would stay up late at night because I wanted this to seem perfect. This led to me stressing too much. I cried. On the bright side, though, I knew that people who surrounded me would support me, and they did. My older sister said that the essay didn't have to be perfect, and my English language arts teacher helped me think of subtopics for the essay. In turn, I learned a lot about writing essays through this process. For instance, I learned that nothing can be perfect and just to do my best, and I learned that from conflict there can be progress in many circumstances. Nevertheless, the point is that I experienced a lot of conflict writing this essay. It is not a sin to get knocked down, but it is a sin to not get back up. You need to stay in the game and keep learning. When you find your voice, then you will be able to help improve the world. I want all of you in this room to turn conflict into a positive. Thank you for your time, and good luck to all the other participants.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next we have, from Rio Hondo, Angeline Araya.
Good morning, everyone, and my name is Angeline Araya, and the title of my essay is Conflict is Not a Waste of Time. Barack Obama once said, peace is not merely the absence of visible conflict. What he is trying to say is that peace is not usually what conflict brings. Conflict usually ends up with people having a negative attitude toward disagreements, fundamentally because we have not learned effective ways to manage the issue. I believe a well-known situation with people dealing with conflicts is either that they do not acknowledge the issue, considering it'll somehow go away, or resolve itself. Let us talk about teenagers. Teenagers are very hard to deal with, am I right, parents? I can relate to your point of view because my mom has to deal with me every day, and I'm thankful for that. Parents have to deal with their child coming home in a bad mood because what? They got in an argument with their best friend or their boyfriend broke up with them. No matter what the reason is, you know you have to have patience to understand what happened. The same thing goes to if you're not close to family or friends and they have a very big problem going on in their life. You should take a shot and go and talk to them and be understanding. Then maybe it'll bring the both of you closer. Even though you may bump heads, eventually there will be a resolution if you just have patience and are understanding towards them. For instance, I want to talk about how stepfamilies experience conflict but can soon grow into one whole family. 3 or 4 years ago, my dad met my stepmom, Sherry. When I first saw her, I thought, who is she and why is she with my dad? You know, when you're little, you don't grasp the interpretation of adult things. Thus, I thought, oh well, she's just here. But as soon as I got to know her, I said, is she always going to be here for us? Me, my dad, and my sister. When I used to go back home with my real mom, I used to tell her, I don't really like her being over there. I feel like she takes up the time I spent with my dad. My mom simply said, it just takes time getting used to someone being around, but you should talk to her. After a while, maybe a year or so, I started to feel secure with her being around. Yes, we had our problems and disagreements, but we all understood each other. Later on, I began to express myself to her and explain why and how I thought it was going to end up me and her not liking each other after our discussion. It wasn't like that at all. We grew closer to one another. After her and my dad got married, I felt like she was my second mom, not my step. To this day, we are still close to each other. We talk about how school's going and if I've had some hard times, stuff like that. See, when you have patience, courage, and most of all, communication, you will see progress, whether it is getting closer to someone or getting used to someone being there for you. Conflicts can bring progress in this swiftly moving river we call life. Thank you for your time, and good luck to all the other participants. Last but not least, thank you judges for this opportunity of having me up here on stage and taking the time to hear my speech. For those contestants who have already presented, your speeches have inspired me. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rio Hondo School. Our next competing school is Durfee, and our first speaker from Durfee is Paul Vien.
How has conflict changed and affected democracy? Do we believe as a society that conflict is necessary for a healthy democracy? Let's first start off by explaining what conflict and democracy really are. Conflicts are solemn disagreements. Conflicts can be petitions, protests, campaigns. A democracy is a form of government where the people have the power. This power grants the people several rights like freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and voting. Despite having the power, the people still have to follow laws. These laws are in place to protect the people's rights, manage the government, and protect against injustices. If the people want to maintain power over this nation, then solemn disagreements must occur within a democracy. Conflict helps to address and solve serious problems in a democracy. Take the civil rights movement, for example. The civil rights movement was a movement composed of protests and campaigns. The civil rights movement helped to rid our democracy of segregation and discrimination, which in turn united all people regardless of the color of their skin. Before, African and Americans and other Americans were separated due to segregation and other factors. After uniting, our democracy could make better decisions that reflected the opinions of all citizens. It also helped create several acts that ensure all people would be treated equally. Conflict have introduced new people to democracy. Take the women's suffrage movement. The women's suffrage movement was composed of petitions, protests, and campaigns. The women's suffrage movement helped to win the rights of voting for women. By allowing women to vote, this helped to introduce a different perspective that could affect the outcome of the vote. Since the movement in 2016, a woman named Hillary Clinton went farther and ran for president of the United States. Though she didn't get elected, this really shows us how far conflict has taken us into democracy. Conflict helps to improve and protect the rights of the people. Take the current immigration problem in the U.S. Before, immigrants were granted refuge here to escape from their countries and war. Now, they're still allowed to come here as long as they go through a certain process. But many are bypassing this process and illegally immigrating to the U.S. By bypassing this process, the U.S. faces a serious safety problem. The presence of millions of these undocumented people twists the law, uses resources, and makes a disguise for dangerous people. By conflict, will we be able to stop this problem and reevaluate and get the government to reevaluate this process and make it in a way where everyone is content? Without conflict in a democracy, the people can no longer stay in power. Conflict helps to address and solve serious problems in a democracy, introduces new people to democracy, and improves and protects the rights of the people. American citizens, if you find issues with your democracy or would like to have something change, find a legal method to cause conflict. This is the only way we can ensure a healthy democracy.
Thank you, Paul. Our next speaker from Durfee School is Oscar Vasquez. Please welcome him to the podium.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Oscar Vasquez, and I would like to share with you guys why conflict is needed in order to progress as a better society. What is conflict? Conflict is a serious disagreement or argument that two or more groups may have with one another. Do you believe that with conflict, our society can progress and improve from how it is today? I believe that conflict creates progress because it helps us practice our communication skills, it opens our eyes to new ideas, and it leads to compromisable solutions. To begin with, I believe that conflict creates progress because it helps us to communicate better as a community. Communication requires having an open mind, patience, and the ability of listening to others. If we end up cowering down from conflict, it does not give us a chance to communicate with one another about our perspective in a certain situation. In the previous year, on Wednesday, March 14, tens of thousands of students across the United States walked out of school to demand that the government needs to take more action on school shootings. Max Walnardi, a senior at Douglas S. Freeman High School, states, "I'm sick of it." He states that he and his fellow peers would not stop fighting until the government were to make some serious changes. Students had the courage to protest for what they believed is right. Because of this protest, they have shown a sign of communication with the government, letting them know that they need to do more to prevent school shootings. Yes, I know that conflict can be hard, but we need to understand that the more that we engage in conflict, the better that we can become at communicating with one another. No, I'm not saying, hey, let's go create conflict and let's see what happens. What I mean is that when it is time for conflict to arise, do not be afraid of participating in it. As the famous American author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey once said, "Find your voice and inspire others to find theirs." These powerful words lead me to believe that our voices have the ability to empower others to use their voice as well. In addition to helping our communication skills, conflict can also help us progress as a better society because it opens our eyes to new ideas. In case you didn't know, conflict can be extremely useful as an innovative, fine-tuning instrument to new ideas. In the year 2016, Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem at his football game as a way to protest against the brutality of police officers, against people of color, and social injustice. Colin Kaepernick had the courage to risk his career in order to express his feelings out to the world, and I'm almost certain that this has opened the eyes to lots of people, letting them know that we need to do more to treat each other more fairly. Conflict leads you to deeper agreements, which is great for creating a stronger bond and implementing successful connections. Last but not least, conflict helps us create progress as a better community because it leads to compromisable solutions. Some may disagree by stating that nonviolent conflict does not lead to solutions and that all it does is create bigger problems, but I strongly disagree. When agreements that are in place are no longer working out for the community, obviously the agreement has to be replaced with something that can work out. I know that change is hard because it creates discomfort to what we're normally adapted to, but we need to learn how to go through a process known as development. For our community to grow, it needs to be consistently examined, discussed, and negotiated. Conflict leads to reinvention and creativity. All in all, conflict is necessary for progress in our society because it helps us practice our communication skills, it opens our eyes to new ideas, and it leads to compromisable solutions. We should all be able to participate in conflict. One more thing before I go. Always remember that your voice is your most powerful weapon. So next time you hear a conflict arise, make sure to let your voice be heard because you can possibly make a difference in creating progress in our society. Remember this, to achieve goals that you've never achieved before, you need to start doing things that you've never done before. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Oscar. Next we have from Potrero School, our first speaker, Abigail Lopez.
Can conflict lead to success? Good morning, my name is Abigail Lopez. The Latin root meaning of conflict is to strike, struggle, or fight. In my case, I'll focus on the struggle. I ask this question because when we take a test, we usually get at least one question wrong. It's a struggle. What do? Well, we look for what we did wrong and practice similar questions so that when we take the next test, we don't make the same mistake. That's kind of how life works. We may make a mistake and we try to remember what we did wrong so that we don't make the same mistake over and over again. One personal example started a couple years ago when my dad in Mexico signed a document that's illegal here in America. As a result, with this new president, my dad got deported and my mom got all the responsibility to take care of us. She applied for many jobs, but they always wanted some documents, and at that time she didn't have any, so they didn't pay her equally. As time passed, they saw that she was hardworking, so they started to increase her payments. After a while, she started to suffer a lot of pain, so eventually she quit the job and went searching for another one. It took him more than 2 months to find one, but with God's help, she was able to find one. At first, they didn't pay equally, but later the manager increased her salary. So now you see that even though we struggled a lot, she still fought through, and now she takes well care of us. With this experience, we were able to grow physically, emotionally, as well as spiritually. For this reason, I believe having conflict with life struggles can lead you to working hard and later on succeeding. Now that I think of it, this experience mirrors to the experience of Job from the Old Testament. He lived a great life. Then one day, Satan came to God and asked him to challenge Job because he was sure that Job would curse God if he were to suffer a lot. God accepted this as long as Satan didn't touch Job. In the course of one day, Job received 4 messages, each one with bad news that his livestock, servants, and children have all died due to marauding invaders or natural catastrophes. So Job tears his clothes and shaves his head in mourning, but he still blesses God in his prayers. Satan appears to heaven again, and God grants him another wish to test Job. This time, Job was afflicted with horrible skin sores. His wife encourages him to curse God, but Job refuses, struggling to accept his circumstances. So, as you see, even though Satan practically ruined Job's life, Job still kept his faith in God. As a result, God gave him 10 children, and he became even wealthier. So without conflict or struggle, progress is not possible. My name is Abigail Lopez, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Abigail. Our next speaker from Potrero School, please welcome Japhet Gamis.
Conflict is a struggle in life that everyone goes through. I'm having my own conflict right here, right now. Without conflict is stress. Without stress, we would probably not be alive. Let's say you're somewhere in the jungle. You're exploring with your friends or family. You come across a snake. The snake is trying to bite you. You just don't stand there and say, "Oh, there's a snake. How nice." No, you would do something about it. You probably get a stick and beat it. This inner conflict is biological, a part of our survival instincts. As scientists explain, it's either fly or fight. Fly is keeping away from conflict, which sometimes might save you. Fight is conflict, which might save you. Let's say you're somewhere in Africa. You're lost in the middle of Africa, and you're trying to find the way back where you came from. You come across a lion, and you're thinking, should I run away or should I stay there? No, you're gonna run away. So recently, 2 weeks ago, a mom saved her 7-year-old son from getting attacked by a cougar. You're probably thinking, how does this relate to conflict? It actually relates a lot. It relates how her mom did not just stand there and let her child be eaten. She actually did something. Now her child is able to make progress in his life. I admit I was nervous since the beginning, but it really doesn't matter because I overcame an obstacle. I overcame speaking to an auditory full of people. Is conflict necessary? I do think conflict is necessary. Without conflict, change can't happen. My name is Jafet Games, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jafet. Thank you, Potrero School. Next from Colombia, let's welcome Giselle Peralta to the stage.
Husbands, wives, children, loved ones stand side by side, tears streaking through the layers of ash and soot that mask their faces. In their eyes, the burning reflection of their homes, their lives, everything gone. The fire dwindles, along with their last few threads of hope. But in the heart of fear and tragedy grows love, love that will conquer anything we face together. Despite its bad reputation, conflict can be positive. It draws people together and shows the best in humankind. It changes us from the inside out. Sometimes conflict is necessary. We need conflict to pave the road to success. In his speech on August 3rd, 1857, former slave Frederick Douglass shared his insight on conflict-induced progress. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet appreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. His words ring true even to this day, from Rosa Parks sitting on the Montgomery bus to the students' protest in response to the Parkland school shooting. It is unrealistic to expect triumph without challenge because you can only gain so much without opposition. It is conflict and adversity that forge and refine character for individuals, communities, and nations. One example is the very recent California campfire. Fully contained on November 25th, 2018, the fire destroyed more than 14,000 homes. Anyone who had anything was helping those who had lost everything. Evacuees and firefighters were greeted warmly on Thanksgiving when hundreds of families left their homes to celebrate alongside one another, donating their resources and love to help. And with that conflict, there came a wonderful change in the heart of the community. They remained kind in spite of all the horrible things that had happened to them. Ash-covered faces became covered with smiles. Those who suffered stood together to support each other in a time of crisis, a story repeated hundreds of times around America. The reactions of those most affected demonstrate how genuine progress can be the outcome of conflict. Everyone here in this room has at the very least one thing in common. We have all faced conflict. Countless times, we have been shoved through obstacles we never asked for, pushed to solve problems we never wanted, and confronted meaningless struggles that were thrown in our faces. School bullies, family struggles, stressful exams, it's easy to get lost in the challenges we face. So find someone, stand with them, and help them. Everyone around you has faced their fair share of unfairness. Find in each other the strength to prevail. And yet, without problems, you would not be the same person you are today. If not for the struggles you have grappled with in the past, your life would be left completely unchanged. Think back to who you were 5 years ago. Not quite as experienced, knowledgeable, or mature, and possibly with different beliefs than you have now. That's because the person you are has faced challenges that have altered your character. Your personality is refined with each twist and turn in your life. Accept challenges as the next opportunity and take matters into your own hands. After all, it's your life. You have the final say in how you allow failure to affect you. Simply put, conflict is the foundation for success. Working through hardships yields critical information and fosters personal growth in ourselves and our abilities. Loss is minimal compared to what is gained, and we gain the most when we work together. Both the conflict and our enlightened response to the conflict are vital to success. We must continue to push and fight unabated. And if we falter, we must redouble our commitment and effort, because together there is always hope. So when it seems as though the world around you is crashing and burning, remember Rosa Parks, the students of Parkland, and the once ashen faces of children now beaming. They've been through the refiner's fire. They did not surrender to terror, to isolation. They did not let their tragedies define them. And so therein lies your choice. When confronted with conflict, will you succumb to fear, or will you stand united and rise above the challenges you face?
Thank you, Giselle. Let's welcome Mr. Johnson Yu from Columbia School.
Neat. It's a whole new world up here. One of the lesser known, yet more intense fights of the century has been writing the introduction to this speech. When it comes to starting speeches, I'm not so fantastic. It's been a tough fight, but I learned from it. That's what I call progress. In fact, without conflict, there can be no progress. Every success we know of is built on conflict. Without conflict, we wouldn't be as technologically or politically advanced as we are now. As I'm sure you all know, a conflict is basically a quarrel or a struggle between two sides. For example, if our bare feet did not have a quarrel with random objects on the ground, such as rocks and Legos and more Legos, shoes won't be needed. According to Khan Academy, if Portugal and Spain didn't have the quarrel to expand, the Columbian exchange would not have occurred. Tomatoes originated from the early Americas, and if Europeans hadn't been so expansion hungry, tomatoes may not have reached Italy, and the delicious pizza, which I assume you all enjoy, may not have been introduced in 1889. Speaking of pizzas, that brings us to the American Revolution. What does the revolution have to do with pizzas? Well, the great English Parliament made a pizza. They began by preheating the oven, which in this case would be the American colonists, with the 1651 Navigation Act interfering with colonial trading. Following that, Parliament started on the dough, but they refused to knead the dough, a process which you would want to go through if you want a delicious outcome. They went straight to a dough roller. The first roll, the Molasses Act, struck the American colonies with a heavy tax. With each assault, Parliament rolled back and forth and back and forth, squeezing wealth and resources from the colonists, all while stretching their patience and the dough, of course, to the extreme. As any pizza maker would know, you can't have a traditional pizza without tomato sauce. However, Parliament wasn't Italian, so they went straight to the toppings. They grabbed a handful of oppressive acts and British soldiers and tossed them in, like tossing on broccolis and Brussels sprouts. Delicious, I know. It was then time to toss that bad boy in the oven. Do you guys remember that one folk tale with a cracker coming to life? Yes? No? Maybe? I'm talking about the gingerbread man. And just like the pizza, just like the cracker, the pizza came to life, fueled by injustice and a thirst for independence. Parliament soon realized that their product was not as appetizing as intended. For years, England tried to fix their culinary creation, but eventually had to fight it. In the end, the colonists broke free from the crown, and that very pizza went down history to be known as the American Revolution. It is true that conflict can lead to pain and division, and sometimes even death. But there is still progress. The Holocaust is a tragic example. 6 million Jews lost their lives. They were herded into gas chambers simply because they were not perfect, Aryan perfect. From the ashes of Auschwitz came a home for those survivors so brutally persecuted. The State of Israel, and a global effort to secure prosperity and peace for all, the United Nations. Yes, many see conflict as an obstacle to progress, but not facing challenges is an obstacle in itself. The results may not taste good, but it is absolutely essential. The American colonists got pretty heated and got themselves into a war against the world's greatest military power at the time, in the name of liberty. Going through conflict can be tough, but we persevere, and learn, real progress will be the result. Meanwhile, the judges shall see whether I am worse at ending speeches or starting them.
Thank you, Columbia School. Next, we have Wright School, and we will start with Miss Yvonne Chen.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne Chen, and I will be reciting my essay on the topic of why I believe conflict is necessary for a healthy democracy. Conflict. That word in and of itself makes many people think about heated and emotional debates. Many people think about scenarios like political disagreements or even all the arguments they've had with a sibling. Yes, conflict is a word that brings a negative connotation, but as a matter of fact, it actually has a deeper meaning to it, and conflict can be good for a lot of things. That includes decision-making in our daily lives and even in our political systems. When there are debates, lots of people realize various things. They can read it as a learning tool, a developing idea, and many other examples that help them think about their decisions critically. For our society to have a healthy democracy, there has to be conflict. Rosa Parks was arrested after she refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white male. Segregation was a big problem back then, and it still is today. According to biography.com, her decision to take a stand in opposition towards the prejudice against people of color contributed to one of the most important boycotts in history, the Montgomery bus boycott. There were two contrasting opinions about segregation at the time, and Rosa Parks started a riot that changed laws and inspired many. This story is told all around the world today, and it has helped change our society for the better. When there are quarrels in our political systems, it brings to mind all the diverse perspectives and contrasting opinions. With the wide diversity of opinions, there are a lot of perspectives to consider. Conflict can help bring up new points, topics, and ideas during an argument. One can see the opposing side and whether they agree or disagree, and they can see the different opinions and different sides of the counter-argument, and it helps us consider whether or not our own opinions are valid. With conflict comes responsibility, and it can teach all of us life lessons and morals. It can help improve relationships, friendships, work in social environments, and even ourselves as individuals. According to an article on entrepreneur.com, conflict is supposedly said to help you listen, to be more alert, to practice controlling your emotions and setting your boundaries and limits. It can lead to finding solutions, and it also allows us to differentiate ourselves from one another. It can teach communication skills, and you can learn to become more patient. Ryan Molden, an associate professor of philosophy at the University of Buffalo, once said, quote, "Disagreements forces us to question our ideas and to consider if our current way is the best way to think about a problem." Conflict helps our government decide the best choice. Perhaps some disputes develop in a bad way, but that could be a good thing. Trial and error can teach all of us to learn from our mistakes. Although some disputes have resulted in violence, for example, wars and media backlash, but many people still take this as a learning experience, and this knowledge can be passed down to future generations so that history will not repeat itself. Without conflict, many powerful voices may not be heard. As a result of political drama, numerous people have stated their opinions on said subjects. For example, in 1955, Martin Luther King Jr. started advocating for civil rights because people of color did not have the same basic rights as whites. His house was vandalized and he was attacked verbally and physically. Even when that had happened, he still continued to fight for equal rights. If he had not spoken out about the racial unfairness in our world, who knows what our society would be like today? Because of some of the altercations in our world, many people state powerful claims, and those of them have either changed or impacted our society as a whole. Due to the fact that conflict has become an exceptional resource for our society to resolve problems and develop new concepts. It has become a method for many of us to teach and learn from. And I strongly believe that conflict is necessary for a healthy democracy. Our society is far from perfect. There are still a lot of things we need to learn and discover about ourselves and for those after us. We can all learn and experience something new. However, in order for that to happen, there has to be some sort of struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Next, from Wright School, please welcome Emily Munoz.
Good morning. My name is Emily Munoz, and I'm going to be reciting my essay on why I believe conflict is not necessary for a healthy democracy. Conflict has been part of our day-to-day lives, whether it's arguing over who should go first or who could run faster. These are just miniature disagreements that happen daily. Yes, it's natural for humans not to agree on certain things. However, conflict in our democracy is different. A Google search defines conflict as a serious disagreement or argument that is typically a protracted one, lasting a long time. A Google search defines democracy as a system of government by the whole population or all eligible members of state, typically through elected representatives. Why would we need serious disagreements or arguments, also known as conflict, in our system of government if wanting to run smoothly? If the government itself has a conflicting relationship, it will only reflect the relationship in our society. As of now, the conflicts between the Democrats and the Republicans only tear us apart rather than uniting us. In an article made by Fact Take News, written by John Gramlich, it says that an overwhelming majority of 86% of Americans say conflicts between Democrats and Republicans are either strong or very strong. This shows that whatever conflict comes up in our democracy affects the well-being of our society, to a point where Americans are considerably less likely to see strong conflicts between two other sets of people. We are getting used to the fact that there is conflict going on in our democracy, and seeing how strong these disputes can get really affects us. Conflict also makes us forget that we are all human beings. And yes, arguments do happen, but for it to permanently affect 172 million residents, of course there's going to be a severe consequence. But that estimate was only made in 2012. Imagine what the number of affected people is now in 2019 with all the conflicts going on in our government and with this president. That number has risen for sure. These serious disagreements can oftentimes overshadow us with harmful consequences that can severely escalate into worse scenarios, especially if we're talking about conflict in our democracy. With all the disagreements that happen in our daily lives, whether it's about the government or society, it could really have a negative effect. For example, the government shutting down. Because of this severe consequence, millions of people lost valuable working time, causing them to stress out and worry whether they're going to get their paycheck that week to support their families or not, therefore deteriorating their mental health. Conflict can severely harm someone's mental health by stressing over the conflicts in our democracy. In the text about conflict, it states that a conflict is a threat to one's interest, needs, or concerns. A conflict is more than a mere disagreement, they say. It is a situation in which people perceive a threat, either physical, emotional, power, status, etc., to their well-being. So why should conflict be necessary for a healthy democracy if it could harm your own mental health? Conflict is not necessary for a healthy democracy. As a matter of fact, it could have quite the opposite effect. It not only affects us as individuals, but it affects our society as a whole. It could divide us rather than unite us. It could lead to harmful consequences rather than lead to positive effects. It can harm your health rather than helping it. So why should it be necessary? As the internationally renowned priest and author Henri Nouwen once said, one of the main tasks of theology is to find words that do not divide but unite, that do not create conflict but unity, that do not hurt but heal. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Our final school is Gidley School, and let's welcome Sofia Hernandez to the podium.
I'm gonna hold it at the podium and walk at certain parts.
Okay, do you want me to put it there?
No. How many of you have ever been in an argument with someone? Ever disagreed or maybe fought with a friend, family member, or classmate? Many people have, myself included. When you argue with someone, this is called conflict. Conflict is often seen as something bad or something we should avoid, when in reality, it can actually improve so much for you, the other person, and the situation that you're in. With conflict, you would be able to hear new ideas from a different point of view. If resolved respectfully, it can strengthen relationships. Even personal insight and growth is gained in conflict. There can be no progress without conflict because it is what allows us to hear new ideas, strengthen relationships, and overall move forward. Many people view conflict as something that signifies a crack in a relationship. Yet research shows it can actually improve much more than staying happy all the time would. If resolved respectfully, conflict can strengthen a relationship. Conflict is a way for bickering people to set boundaries or limits. Through conflict, you are able to express thoughts, typically opposing, but then coming to a point where the line is drawn, no further. When this happens, people know in the future that they can only argue so much before they get to that limit. If you avoid conflict, you never set this boundary, meaning things you don't want to be said can be said, and you never hear different ideas. There's a quote which says, "Conflict is an opportunity to learn to love our partner better over time." Yes, this quote in particular is talking about love between couples, but the general topic doesn't have to apply to that. What the quote is trying to say is that with conflict, you gain an opportunity to learn to respect, or as the quote is describing, love, the person you're arguing with more. With setting boundaries and learning to respect the other person, we can see that conflict helps make progress with the relationship, helping to strengthen it and become closer with the person whom we are bickering with. Similar to strengthening relationships, conflict can also allow you to hear new ideas from a different point of view. By doing this, listening skills are gained. While trying to voice your own opinions, you are obligated to listen to the opposing thoughts. You can then build from them and make greater progress. Years ago, I was in a class working on a project with a group of classmates. I was in a small argument with one of the members of our group because I was headstrong about my own ideas and not listening while they disagreed and tried to tell me theirs. At the time, I was being very stubborn and not listening since I had all these ideas of how the project should go. I recall getting annoyed, and this is what sparked the conflict. As we quarreled and tried to say why we were right, I began to listen. And then I realized that I could probably use some of their ideas, along with some of mine, to complete the assignment. Not only was the project really good, but we received a great grade for it too. Thanks to conflict, hearing new ideas and improving listening skills can contribute to making progress with anything. Strengthening relationships and hearing new ideas definitely aren't the only two things gained in conflict. Although most people don't recognize it at first, conflict actually helps us learn a lot about ourselves and how to improve ourselves too. Self-awareness is gained in conflict, which helps in managing ourselves better in the future. Not only do we learn a lot about ourselves, but we may even learn about the other person too. As they're talking, they may say something that will give you a little bit of background or information about them. All in all, conflict allows us to discover new things about ourselves that can help us in the future, or new things about other people that can bring us closer together. As you can see, there can really be no progress without conflict, because it is what ultimately moves things forward, makes progress. If rectified correctly, conflict can strengthen a relationship, give you the opportunity to hear new ideas from a different point of view, and help you to gain personal insight and growth, all of which can bring us closer together. So remember, yes, conflict can be hard, but instead of expelling energy on how to avoid it, welcome it, because in the long run, a great amount of progress is made. Thank you.
Our final speaker is from Gidley School. Please welcome Lauren Tran to the stage.
What challenges you? What are the struggles that interfere with your life? What are the problems that confront you and try to bring you down? That is conflict. Most people think of wars when they hear that word, but there's many degrees of conflict. Conflict can be as big as a world war or as small as deciding what to eat for breakfast. Some people think, I wish the world could be perfect. I wish I could always get the top grades without studying, and my brother would just leave me alone and never fight with me again. Why? Why do conflict and struggles always seem to be thrown our way? It's inconvenient, right? I mean, why do we need conflict? It just makes our lives harder. But imagine a world without conflict. We would have no character or determination if everything was perfect. In fact, we would just be lazy with no motivation to do things. We need conflict. You need it, I need it, everyone needs it. Conflict shapes who we are. It gives us the perseverance to learn from our mistakes, and that makes us wiser. Without conflict, we can't go anywhere, and I mean it. It's all about overcoming your conflict and using it as your benefit. Once you do that, I guarantee you'll progress and improve. I'm going to share a story with you that I believe proves that there's absolutely no progress without any conflict. There was once a little boy named Ton, who was a refugee from the Vietnam War. His dad had died from leukemia, leaving his mom to care for 9 children alone. To escape the war-filled country, Ton and his family boarded a 50-foot boat with over 200 other people and left the Vietnam shore. They were only searching for one thing: freedom. Ton's mother said, I knew there was only a 5 to 10% chance to survive the boat trip, but it was worth the risk for a chance for freedom. On the boat, Ton and everyone else suffered for days from thirst and hunger. Just when land was in sight, the small boat crashed on rocks and started to sink. Ton and his family managed to swim to shore, and they lived there until they were sponsored and brought to America. Some of you are probably thinking, cute survival story, next speech. But it's not just a little survival story. Before Ton came to the United States, his only conflict had been surviving. The will to survive drove the refugees to do whatever it took to get to freedom. But in America, he was faced with a whole new wave of conflicts. In America, one of his first challenges was to learn a new language. Ton couldn't communicate with anyone and had a hard time learning. But he listened attentively and soon got the hang of English with time and effort. Once he overcame that, he was able to use his knowledge of the English language to get himself into honors classes in high school. He was planning his way to college because that was where he wanted to go. Yet another conflict stood in his way: poverty. Poverty was one of Ton's biggest conflicts. His whole family worked to earn a living, and Ton helped maintain the church they lived at, keeping the lawns mowed and the rooms clean. At 8 years old, he basically had the job of a custodian. However, instead of letting his poverty control him, Ton used it as his advantage. He qualified for grants and earned scholarships that helped get him into college. Once he was there, he faced a conflict within himself: the fear of failure. Ton was so afraid to make mistakes, but no one is perfect, and he soon learned that. Failure is a type of conflict that forces us to rethink our position in order to be successful. It allows us to become wiser, and that helps us learn how to do things in the future. That boy Ton was my dad. He faced every conflict that life threw his way. First, he fought for survival and freedom by coming to America. Once in America, he had to learn the language, work to support his family, and get into college. From all that, Tom learned that it's okay to fail and make mistakes, which pretty much stayed with him for life. It all links together. You can grow and improve with you taking care of that argument with your friend, that mini war with your brother, your living condition, anything. Think about yourself right now. The person you know wouldn't be there without conflict. We're experiencing struggles and overcoming conflicts in our lives every single day. Remember that even though conflicts seem unbeatable, there's always a way through. Be the overcomer and progress forward. Don't let your struggles control you and break through. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, good job. So what'd you think? Aren't they amazing? I felt like I was watching a TED Talk. Good job, boys and girls. I'm going to ask our 6th grade students to make their way up to the stage. We're going to go right into our awards ceremony. And if Dr. Garcia and Ms. Cobian can join me on stage. So our 6th grade students will receive a participation medal. So I'm going to call them in the order that they appeared. And then we are going to announce the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st place winners. No, they can stay. Okay. Mr. Zach Yuan, come on up. Participation medal from Gidley School. Leland Garcia from Wright School. Aaron Ramirez from Wilkerson School. Destiny Nora from Columbia School. Estrella Quijada, Cherry Lee School. Tung Bui from Potrero School. Chloe Apodaca from Durfee School. Karina Lee from Sherpser School. Valerie Ramirez from Rio Hondo School. Jasper Lee from New Lexington School. Valeria Becerra from Cortada School. Justin Vargas from Lagore School. Ira Maddock from Rio Vista. And Kalia Naranjo from Clemenson School. Let's give all of our 6th grade participants a big round of applause. Our 3rd place winner from our 6th grade oratorical competition is Jasper Lee from New Lexington School. Congratulations, Jasper. Second place from Gidley School, Mr. Zach Yuan. And in 1st place, we actually have a tie. So you will share a trophy now, but we will be ordering you a trophy. And both of your names will be going on our perpetual plaque. Dr. Garcia, can you hold up the plaque? So your names will live forever on this plaque. So 1st grade, 1st place. I'm nervous, and I didn't even speak. First place, our tie, our first speaker, Potrero School, Tong Bui. And from Clemenson School, Kelia Naranjo. And let's give Miss Arlene Burry a round of applause. She's our amazing photographer. Weren't these guys wonderful? Thank you, sixth graders. You may take your seat. Okay, are we ready for our 7th and 8th grade teams? So our 7th and 8th graders, we give a first and second place award to the team, the best overall team, and then the individual students may receive a third, second, and first place individual award. So we'll start with our best teams. Participation, thank you. So in the order that they participated in, our 7th and 8th graders will be receiving a plaque. We'll start with Rio Hondo, Miss Jasmine Monreal, and Angeline Araya. Durfee School, Paul Vienne and Oscar Vasquez. Potrero, Abigail Lopez and Jafet Games. From Colombia, Giselle Peralta and Johnson Yu. From Wright School, Yvonne Chen and Emily Munoz. And from Gidley School, Sofia Hernandez and Lauren Tran. We are going to begin with our best order. This individual received a certificate of honorable mention for her excellent essay, and this certificate goes to Ms. Giselle Peralta. Third place, best order, from Durfee School, Mr. Oscar Vasquez. Second place, best order, from Gidley School, Miss Lauren Tran. And our first place, best order, from Gidley School, Sofia Hernandez. Okay, thank you, boys and girls. You can walk off the stage. Our best teams. We have a second place and a first place. And our first place team, their names will be added to our perpetual trophy. Ms. Cobian, thank you for picking that up. We will begin with, in second place for best team, Giselle Peralta and Johnson U, Columbia School. And while they're taking pictures, I want to acknowledge you as our audience. You've done an amazing job, so thank you. Let's give our audience a big round of applause. Our first place, best team, Sofia Hernandez, Lauren Tran, Gidley School. Let's give Gidley School a big round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us for our 4th annual EMCSD speech competition, and we will see you all next year.